Good evening. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Ontario Plan 2050 Technical Update Supplemental Environmental Impact Report Scoping Meeting. My name is Kimberly Ruddens, Principal Planner at the City of Ontario, leading the Ontario Plan 2050 Update effort under the direction of and guidance of our Planning Director, Rudy Zeladon. Tonight, our team, including city staff and Placeworks, our consultant, are holding a scoping meeting to provide information about the process, a brief overview of the project, CEQA and that process, and also gathering your comments. We encourage your participation during this effort and share information with the other citizens throughout the community about the TOP update. I would like to now introduce Nicole Vermillion of Placeworks to help us understand more about CEQA and the scoping plan or the scoping meeting for the Ontario Plan update. Nicole?
My name is Nicole Vermillion. I'm with Placeworks, and welcome to tonight's scoping meeting for the Ontario Plan 2050 update. And the purpose of the scoping meeting is really to provide opportunity for public input, to listen to the public's thoughts and concerns about what the environmental impacts of the proposed project would be, and to help determine the scope, the focus, and the content of the supplemental EIR. One of the things that we look for is to identify environmental topics that might be of concern to the community, to identify potential impacts, and then our EIR looks at ways to avoid or reduce those impacts. This is not a public hearing. This is the beginning of the public process for CEQA, so California Environmental Quality Act. It's really the first opportunity for public feedback on the environmental impacts of the project. No decision is made at tonight's meeting, and really the merits of the project are not discussed. The focus of this meeting is strictly the supplemental EIR and to make sure that the supplemental EIR addresses the appropriate environmental concerns. So just a couple of housekeeping items, just because this is a virtual meeting. This meeting is being recorded so that if you do get unmuted during the comment period, the question and answer period, just make sure that when you're done to mute yourself again and make sure that your camera is off. And if you have any technical questions, our staff is here. You could use the chat function and they can answer any technical questions that you might have, any issues that arise. And so the screen shows kind of where you can find the chat function. At the end of the scoping meeting, we'll have a public comment period, and we'll be able to listen to any oral comments that you would like to make on the environmental impact report. So we'll go over that again, but just to talk about it a little bit before we even start the presentation, when we get to the public comments, you can raise your hand on your computer or your phone, and that will let us know that you have a question or a comment that you would like to make. And then our host will unmute you when it's your turn and then lower your hand when your question's been answered. So with that, I'm going to introduce Colin Drucker on the Ontario Plan update itself.
Thank you, Nicole. Next slide. Thank you. So the Ontario Plan itself, the update effort that we are conducting really keeps a lot of what is in the Ontario Plan constant. The vision is not changing. The framework and approach is not changing. These are really topical updates in response to changes in state laws, various government mandates, and changes in the economy. Obviously, with the pandemic just being the most recent change from the last time the Ontario Plan was prepared, which was in 2010. There are also some opportunities for technological updates and some innovation in strategies that the city wants to take advantage of. Next slide. So the main issues driving the update are on housing, in particular the housing element update and the substantial amount of growth that the state requires the city to accommodate, changes in mobility related to alternative transportation, which is obviously supported by the city's recent alternative transportation master plan and infusing those concepts into the policy plan. A focus on community health, a topic that is already covered by the Ontario Plan, but expanding upon that into the topic of environmental justice, which was introduced into the general plan arena through Senate Bill 1000 in 2016, and then focusing on the adaptation and resiliency strategies that were introduced through new legislation regarding climate change. Finally, there are a number of economic considerations with respect to the current market, short-term trends, and long-term vision of where people think the economy is going. Next slide. There are various components of the Ontario Plan. Normally, when we are doing an effort like this, this is called a general plan update. The Ontario Plan is more than a general plan. There, as I mentioned before, is the vision. There is also a direction on governance, how the city makes decisions in that governance manual. The policy plan, you see that third item there, which is the city's legal general plan. And then there are implementation programs that reinforce and strive to achieve the goals and implement the policies of the policy plan. And then there are city council priorities that are reinforced annually through the budget process and a series of tracking and feedback that reinforce the priorities and connect them to the long-term goals and policies. Next slide. So what we're here primarily to talk about when it comes to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, is the policy plan. That is the primary component of the Ontario Plan that could actually generate potential environmental impacts. A general plan, or the city's policy plan, it's required by state law for every jurisdiction in California, and it is the long-term planning document that looks at various goals and policies on both required and optional topics that are considered to be of local importance. It contains most notably a land use plan and a circulation system, and it guides the way that cities make investments, that the private sector makes investments, and how our community develops, is maintained, and is improved. And it's a tool for decision makers, as well as residents, public agencies, the private sectors, community, including developers and service providers, to understand where decisions are being made, what decisions are being made, and what the future should look like in Ontario. Finally, it was last updated in 2010. As I mentioned before, the housing element was last updated in 2013. The housing element is a relatively unique element of the policy plan. It has its own mandatory 8-year review cycle, and the housing element will actually be updated slightly earlier because of the due date in 2022 than the balance of the Ontario Plan. Next slide. So this scoping meeting tonight represents another outreach into the community to inform them of long-term planning processes. Many of the topics I've mentioned earlier really reflect years of outreach that the city has done starting back in 2018. This slide shows the variety of outreach efforts and topics that the city has conducted over the years. And we have carried through all of the input from these efforts into our understanding of existing conditions and desires. And we're going to combine them with our understanding of the city's need to respond to state laws and additional input that we are obtaining through the outreach being conducted this year. Next. This shows you a map of where we are in the process. As I mentioned before, the city has been conducting outreach over the last few years. We started off in 2021, looking at existing conditions, understanding the city's housing strategies, and looking at potential draft land use scenarios. We are now in the middle of our outreach and engagement process, and we have selected the preferred land use plan to study under the California Environmental Quality Act to understand the potential environmental impacts. And we will be refining the policies and conducting the CEQA analysis and bringing some of that information to the community in the coming months. Next, after we get through this phase, we will be looking at implementation into objective design standards, updating the city's climate action plan, and preparing the implementation plan and website and other technological updates. And our goal is to arrive at the adoption process later in 2022 and the public hearing process that would entail. Next. So the role of the land use plan, which is really at the heart of the policy plan or a general plan, as it relates to CEQA, the land use plan identifies how much growth will occur, where it will occur, and the type of development that will be allowed, and ultimately the amount of growth that the city could see. It is not zoning. It does not get that detailed into very specific individual uses that are permitted or not permitted, or the level of approvals that are needed. That is in the development code. The general plan, policy plan, land use map looks at the broad range of categories of types of land uses and where they should go, and sets the pattern for growth in the city. It does still contain some level of detail, but it is not the detail of zoning. Next. On the screen here, you see the city's current land use plan. And then if you go to the next slide, you will see the areas of potential change. You can see that this is a focused update, and the majority of colors on the map that you see here relate to the city's housing strategy to accommodate the state requirement to find room for over 20,000 new housing units over the 8-year period of 2021 to 2029. Other colors on this map reflect either projects already in the entitlement process or input from the public, including property owners and the development community. If you go to the next slide, you will see what the potential draft land use plan will look like. And this, as of now, is what is being studied under the EIR. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So all of those colors on the map are associated with assumptions of various densities and intensities. And this chart shows the number of housing units, people, and amount of building space and jobs that are in the city, both today under existing conditions, what is permitted under the currently approved Ontario plan, and then what it would be potentially approved under the proposed Ontario plan. And at the bottom, you can see the difference between the proposed Ontario plan and the currently approved Ontario plan. And the number of residential units there that increase reflects, again, largely the city's response to the state mandate to accommodate a large amount of units as a part of the housing element. And then the residential square footage change reflects largely changes in the economy, notably the decrease in the demand for office space. Next slide. So if you want to see more about the land use plan and other information on the website, you can go to ontarioplan.org, and there's a link to get to the update page, and you can see a map that you can interact with, zoom in, click on maps, see what's changing, why it's changing, and find other resources and information. And now I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
So now I'll go over the CEQA process. So this is a supplemental EIR, which is a little bit different than a regular EIR, because what we're doing is tiering off of the 2010, the Ontario Plan EIR. So that's the certified EIR. So the supplemental EIR will analyze the environmental impacts associated with the population and employment growth between what's already approved, so the current TOP, versus what the proposed 2050 TOP 2050 allows. So that is the primary difference between what like a typical EIR would look at versus how we're able to tier off of an EIR and do a supplemental EIR. So just to go back a slide or a couple of slides. So basically where our environmental impact report is essentially looking at the net difference. So the environmental impacts associated with the change in the residential units, population, non-residential square footage, and employment that the proposed land use changes would generate. So the purpose of CEQA, and just for everyone's clarification, it stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. While it's spelled CEQA, everyone calls it CEQA, and it discloses the impacts to the public and the decision makers and identifies ways to avoid or reduce environmental impacts. This goes over the environmental process, and the areas highlighted in yellow are the opportunities for public input. And the reason why we highlight these areas in yellow is because one of the primary purposes of CEQA is really an opportunity to provide an opportunity for the public to comment and be a part of the environmental process. We essentially start with the notice of preparation, which was distributed on July 20th. Tonight, we have the scoping meeting, which is another opportunity for public comment. Then we prepare the draft supplemental EIR. Once we're done with that, we send it out for review for another 45 days. And that's another opportunity for the public to comment. And during that stage, if we receive written comments from the public and public agencies, we prepare a final supplemental EIR where we respond to those comments. And again, that's another opportunity for the public to comment, and it gets to the Planning Commission, then City Council hearings, and then finally the CEQA, we issue a notice of determination. So the notice of preparation contains a brief project description of the location. Obviously, it's the entire city of Ontario, and where documents related to the proposed project can be found. It notifies responsible agencies and other interested parties that a supplemental EIR would be prepared, and it solicits input from the public regarding the scope, focus, and content of the supplemental EIR. And the NOP has a 30-day public review period. We are covering all 20 topics in the supplemental EIR. When we circulated the original EIR for the Ontario plan in 2010, so the 2010 certified EIR, not all of these topics were covered. There has been changes to the CEQA that requires us to look at energy impacts and tribal cultural resources, for example. And so the supplemental EIR will address all 20 environmental impacts in the updated CEQA guidelines. We are preparing technical studies. One of those studies is a transportation assessment that FEIR and peers will be doing. It looks at vehicle miles traveled impacts pursuant to Senate Bill 743. We're also doing a noise study as well as an air quality and greenhouse gas emissions study for the EIR. And as part of the overall TOP 2050 process, we're also doing a community climate action plan update. So just to highlight the opportunities for public comment now, the notice of preparation was circulated from review starting on July 20th, and the public review period for the NOP ends on August 19th. It was noticed in the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin on July 6th. The NOP is available for review at the city and as well as the city's website. And obviously, opportunity for comment is right now to tonight's scoping meeting. There'll be future opportunities for public comment. One is during the draft supplemental EIR, which we estimate to occur in spring of next year. Then again, we'll prepare a final SEIR, which includes the response to comments, and then the Ontario Plan 2050 hearings as well. There are several ways to submit comments on the NOP, and this first you could send by email to Tom Grant at the City of Ontario or mail comments to the City of Ontario as well. Please submit your comments by August 19th. And if you'd like to be added to the distribution list and receive updates on the proposed project, please also indicate so and via email to Tom Grant at ontario.gov, ontarioca.gov. So now we're at the question part of our meeting. So I just want to pause for a second to say that anyone who wants to comment on the environmental impacts of the proposed project, there's several ways to do that. And the primary way to do that is to raise your hand. So you can, again, submit comments in writing to the City of Ontario, and any comments that are submitted in writing will be included as an appendix to the draft supplemental EIR. But if you'd like to have your comments submitted orally, what you could do right now during this time is to raise your hand, and then our host will let you know that your turn is up. We'll unmute you, and then you'll be able to speak on your comments. So is there anyone that wanted to? So I'm going to open up the comment period right now. And so again, you can raise your hand using the Zoom feature. If you're on a cell phone or a regular phone, press *9 on your phone. We ask that comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you have concerns specific to your property, you can contact the City of Ontario. Tonight's scoping meeting is specifically for the environmental impacts of the proposed project. And so we're not really answering questions on the environmental impacts here, but we're wanting to see what comments that the community has and concerns that community has on environmental impacts. For translation services, please contact the city and a representative will reach out for you. And if there's any questions and concerns that we did not address today, please email the city.
So Nicole, we have one person with their hand raised.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and allow Jesus Fonseca to talk, and they should be able to unmute themselves and speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
The noise impact study. I have a few hundred decibel readings that the Ontario Airport Authority did a study on. And they're in excess of 90 to 100. And these decibel readings, the decibel monitor was placed over 300 yards away from my home. And still the readings are over 90. And I have been going to the city council, the Ontario Airport Authority, which says they have no authority. The flight pattern has been changed. When the planes fly over my house, or when they fly to the west, they do a complete U-turn and fly over my home so low that I've recorded it, and it's 1,000 feet. And the biggest offenders are UPS, FedEx, and Amazon, because these planes are heavily, they're overloaded. For them to be at 1,000 feet turning over my home is unacceptable. And this happened after I added 1,200 square feet to my home and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Yet I can't enjoy my house because of the noise of these airplanes flying over my house. And nobody is answering me when I go to these meetings. Nobody says that, oh, we're gonna check on it, we're gonna see what we can do. Nothing is done. And I've been fighting this for years. And every time I ask for a question to be answered, Wapner just dismisses me. Everybody dismisses me when I go up there and speak. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of people, their signatures or addresses, complaining about the same thing I am. But yet nothing is being done, and nobody is saying anything to resolve this issue. I mean, it's getting out of hand. Where I'm a permanently disabled veteran. I was shot in the head, and these planes that are flying over my house shake my house, wake me up in the middle of the night, and it's starting to get unbearable. I mean, I have talked to Senator Connie Leva, Congresswoman Torres, You know, everybody says that they're gonna help, but nobody's helping. And nobody from the city even says anything about it. I mean, if the decibel reader was put in my backyard, those decibel readings would be in excess of 150. And it's to my understanding that the decibel readings of the airplanes that are flying over are supposed to be 60 decibels. When they turn over my house is when they start accelerating, is when the most noise that comes out. And I have videos of planes. I mean, you can see the black smoke coming out of the planes that fly over my house. So this is affecting my health, and it's getting out of hand. And why is it that nobody can answer or solve this problem? I mean, it's everybody just passes the buck here, 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 here. And it wasn't like this when I added on to my house. I mean, I put new windows on half of my house, but yet I still have to pause my TV until the plane flies over, then I'm able to watch TV again. As I said, as a permanent disabled veteran, I deserve better than this. Being ignored time after time after time is unacceptable. Now, when is somebody gonna finally answer me? Because every time they say, "Oh, that there's litigation going on, so we can't answer." I've before COVID, there was a woman that looked up to see if there was any lawsuits going on because of this, and no, there was no lawsuits going on. But yet they won't answer me whatsoever. Now, does anybody on the other end of this line have an answer for me? Because they say, oh, they have to fly into the prevailing wind. The wind is like at 2 to 3 knots. That's not a prevailing wind. And it just, I don't understand why they can't fly like at a John Wayne Airport. Go up directly as high as you can and then make your turn. But these airplanes are flying to the west, or I'm sorry, flying to the west, doing a complete U-turn and going east. Why can't they take off to the east when that's their direction to go? And also, they were supposed to take off to the east from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And somebody threw that out the window. And that's not happening anymore. I mean, I've got planes coming over my house like every 2 minutes, every 15 seconds. And it's I just can't take it anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Fonseca.
Yeah.
We appreciate your comment. The scoping meeting exactly for what you're articulating to us. This is documented as part of the scoping meeting, and it will be part of the record as analyzing the air quality, noise impacts as part of the environmental document. At this time, we're collecting comments, but I understand your frustration, and the CEQA document does address these items that you've raised. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
But there's a the cutoff is Francis Street, where they soundproof the homes.
Yes.
I live a block south of Francis, and to tell me that the decibels are less a block away.
Right. Well, at this time, we're not able to comment on that because we're collecting comments and we're just starting the data gathering.
Yeah.
So at the time of data gathering, we would appreciate it if you stay involved throughout this process and make sure that we're addressing the larger issues of noise and air quality. So we appreciate your comment. And at this time, if you'd like to send me kruddens@ontario.com, more of a discussion of your comment or your issue, you're welcome to at any time.
And I
So-
send that to where?
Kruddens, Ruddins.
Yeah, I see that.
Yes, please send your additional information or comment. We will put it as part of the record.
I mean,
So thank you.
they did do a study already, and
Well,
And-
yes, I understand that, but I want to make sure that we gather comments, and I don't have the whole record of what's happened in the past, and that's what we're doing. We're doing our due diligence right now to collect information of what we're going to research as part of the different issue areas as part of the CEQA checklist. So as part of that, I highly encourage you to go to our website and see other information there. And if you would be so kind to send me your email, I can give you more information on CEQA, because that is something where we do look at the environmental issues of the project.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thank you for your answer.
And Hallie, before we go to the next commenter, it's just looking through the chat, it looks like there are a couple people who've requested Spanish translation services. So I just wanted to pause to say that this slides will be translated into Spanish and will be available on the city's website in mid-August, as well as this presentation as well.
Hey, Nicole, I'll just translate that. So, por ahorita, mientras esta presentación va a ser en inglés, pero en la próxima semana o los medianos de agosto sí vamos a traducir esta presentación y va a estar disponible en la página de web de ontarioplan.org/TOP2050. Pero si tiene preguntas en español, me puede llamar a mí a mi número de teléfono 909-395-2432 o me puede mandar un correo electrónico también y los puedo ayudar en cualquier manera. Gracias.
All right, we have another hand raised. So Sochi, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk. And if you could unmute yourself when you are ready to speak.
Hello, thank you for having this evening. I have a couple questions. First off, how many participants are logged on?
Total, oh, go ahead, Nicole. I apologize.
No, aside from administrators and employees.
A total of 9 attendees at this time.
Okay. Well, I want to make it a point that I have 6 community members in my home who are needing some sort of translation. I thought that since the standard was set with the attempt at the last meeting, that would continue. I really feel it's a disservice when it's changed without any notifications. And I'm sharing this meeting all through social media, and this meeting wasn't really publicized. So my comment on that is please do better for our community, because in order for them to participate, they need to understand. So now there's a delay where they need to come back in August and not have the full experience and now read what is said, or I don't even know if the added commentary will be translated. So, I mean, I appreciate these meetings. This is an awesome thing to have, but I think, you know, we need to do better in including the whole community, not just a select few. Now, back to what Mr. Fonseca was saying about you're just gathering comments and information. what are you going to do with all of this information? Is it just a report so you can move forward with the project? Or are you really truly listening to the residents so you can make adjustments and improvements with this project?
From the city standpoint, and then I'll have Nicole speak to the CEQA process. The city is gathering comments because as you have been participating in all our workshops, and we appreciate your participation, we are also formulating environmental justice policies. And I'm hoping that as part of our outreach and as part of your outreach efforts, that people are going to fill out the survey of environmental justice survey that we have on our website at ontarioplan.org/TOP 2050. I highly encourage, as part of this, these comments are important in concert with the survey of environmental justice. And part of that, as you articulated, Soji, is that putting in procedures and protocols for outreach. And as you said, we will in the future have Spanish translation. And that's something that we will put it in the EJ policies as part of what our procedures are for all outreach. So I want to make sure that this is a learning curve for us. This process is, for our part, important for developing policies related to equity. But on the other part of it, and I'll have Nicole speak to that, is about CEQA and our CEQA compliance with preparing the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report. So Nicole, could you describe a little bit about what the comments, why we do this?
Well, quickly, then I understand that you want to be in compliance with CEQA, but at the same time, you have to question the efforts. We have 9 attendees. So 9 people are going to give their input on what's going to change Ontario up until the year 2050. So, you know, that's a little bit questionable. I can almost assure that there's probably more administrators and upper management logged on than residents. So, you know, I think we can collectively do better in that. You know, just being a community member, I want to do my part. And I have been spreading the message about this meeting and printed up flyers and was like, hey guys, log on, do this survey. But when people don't understand completely what it is, and the city really hasn't established this partnership with the residents, it's difficult. And now we're at a place where it's the 11th hour. You have one more meeting after this. Is that correct? One more meeting?
For outreach, we have an education part of outreach. We have another meeting about going over policies, and there'll be other workshops. There'll be workshops with the city council and planning commission in the future. And as the draft EIR goes out, there'll be opportunities to comment on the environmental document as well. So that's what's important, is this is stepwise moving through this process. So all the comments that are collected and all the outreach that we do is not just at this time it's ended. It goes all the way until final approval of the project. So that's one thing. Outreach is throughout, and I hope you express that to your network of folks. And I'm hoping that you can help us spread the word even more, because with our efforts, we appreciate you spreading the word about the meetings, because with your efforts, I was hoping we'd even get more. So I appreciate that, that you're part of us spreading the word.
Yeah, I think that not having Spanish just put us back about a few steps, because last week, though it was a little bit choppy, it did create that sense of like, hey, you know, community, that we're here for you. But now it's like, it's not offered today. It just leaves people frustrated when there's not consistency. So,
Right.
I applaud the efforts and I hope they continue, but I like to say we collectively definitely can do better. And I hope that the city does so. Thank you so much, Kim. And I hope we have 9 other participants that want to say something.
Well, I appreciate your help in this. And, you know, I think Rudy Zeladon, our planning director, wants to speak. Is that correct, Rudy?
Yeah, just real quick. I
Thank
think,
you.
no, Kim, I think you've pretty much you said it correctly. But one of the things, maybe Nicole, you can just kind of go back to kind of the topics that we're discussing in the EIR, and that's what it is today. Is like we've identified certain topics that we're going to analyze, and the purpose of this meeting is to look at, okay, what other topics are we missing? Is there anything that we're missing? You know, the airport came up. Well, that's part of, you know, the air quality. That's part of the noise that's going to be done. So that's where we're going to be looking at that. But the purpose is really to look at what other things are we missing? Anything that is not on that list? Whether it's, you know, we're looking at air quality, cultural, energy, GHG. We're looking at a lot of topics, and the purpose really of this meeting is like Kim said, there'll plenty of opportunities to outreach where we're going to talk about policies, where we're going to talk about you know, more participation in this TOP update. But today's meeting is just as we get going, is to really look at environmental. What are the things that we need to be looking at that are important? And Sochi, I really appreciate it, because I think getting the word out is for us is big, and it helps us, because we do notify, we do get it in the newspaper, we do put it on the website, and a lot of these scoping meetings that we do have, you know, the attendance, it can vary, but you know, it's getting the word out, and you know, we're going to be doing a better job of you know, helping get the word out, and especially to our community that speaks various languages. And I think one of the things that we could do is we can also follow up with you and any of your residents that can even want to that weren't part of this, or they want to know part of this. We could set a separate meeting aside where either you can come in, or we can do it by Zoom, and then just kind of discuss it in Spanish. We can have someone come in and do it in Spanish for you. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're transparent, but at the same time, I also want to make sure that we kind of focus on what the meeting's about, is to hear from the communities, to hear from, are we missing anything that we're not focusing on in terms of environmental when we go through this exercise.
And I do want to jump in, just because to answer the question of what the EIR will be focusing on. Early on, we were talking about the opportunities for public comment, and this meeting, the NOP is the very first start of the CEQA process. So this is the first opportunity to really talk about the environmental impacts of the project and things that you want addressed in the EIR. So as we were saying, you know, we had a commenter speak about the airport issues, and it sounds like the noticing and discussions in Spanish seems to be also a comment on the CEQA process. So we do hear you. We are taking your comments. We are translating the slides in Spanish, as well as this meeting by mid-August.
Thank you. Okay, Holly, do you see anyone else that may have a comment or raise their hand at this time?
Nobody else has raised their hand, and we don't have any more comments in the chat.
Okay. With that said, Rudy, do you have any closing comments or thoughts before we end this meeting at this time? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your participation in the scoping meeting. We really appreciate it. Once again, this is beginning of outreach for the CEQA process. So please stay tuned. Go to our website, ontarioplan.org/TOP2050. And also, please encourage folks to go onto the website and complete the environmental justice survey. And we will be closing that survey on August 31st. So we appreciate your participation in that and future workshops, and we'll keep striving to do better to get the word out sooner and faster, and reach as many people as possible. With that said, we really appreciate folks for taking their evening time to be part of this workshop or scoping meeting. And please stay tuned for our next one. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at kruddens@ontarioca.gov. Otherwise than that, please stay safe. healthy, and we will have the next meeting in the next month coming. So have a great evening. And once again, thank you.